Okay, now that we got through Lambda console, step functions, really the next level up is to go to Cloud9. And this is really one of the huge advantages of Cloud9 is that it can natively develop Lambda functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new environment here. If you already have an existing environment, that's totally fine. We'll just call this Lambda dev, March 14th. And then I'm going to just pick everything defaults here. And when I create this environment, a few things to point out are that you can actually import lambdas that were already written previously and debug them. And so why would you want to do that? Well, one of the reasons you'd want to do this is that you may be working on a team of people with microservices in Python and you're building lambdas, and you actually may want to import it into an environment which makes it easier to debug. Once you get into more complex lambdas, let's say the lambda is like 1,000 lines of code, then maybe that console is not going to be your friend. You may want to build it out into a more rich environment. So that's one of the reasons why Cloud9 is so handy, is I can literally import something that's running in production and debug what's happening. And I've actually done this on projects. Another thing that you can do with Cloud9 as well is that you can also do pair programming. And that's also a really incredible feature of Cloud9, is you can invite people into your Cloud9, and you maybe multiple people. Like if you click on this collaborate, you can add people in here and you can start pair programming a Lambda function and debugging one in production. So that's a huge feature. And if you just go to share here, you would go like this, and you could set up somebody that's already in your AWS account, or even invite other people outside of your organization. So really powerful feature. So what I'm going to do to develop a function in Cloud9 though is I'm going to click on this AWS resource tab here, and you'll see there's local functions and there's remote. So because I already built a remote function earlier, let me first show you how the import works. So if I scroll down here, I think I have one, hello March 14th. I'm going to double click on this, and what it'll do is it'll prompt me to do an import. That's fine. And what's great about this, yes, I'm recording as well. And with this as well, what you can do is you can say import JSON. You go through here and you now have the exact same thing that was built previously. So in this example, again, I can look at the event, I can look at the context, I can look at all this stuff, but let me show you the real benefit as well, is that if I go over to this Lambda function now, it should appear in local. So let's scroll here. See, now it appears local if I refresh this icon. And if I right click on this, I can now go to run, and you see I have 4 options. I have run local, run remote, run API gateway local, or run API gateway remote. The main takeaway here is that, and I'm sure the Cloud9 interface will get enhanced more and more, but for now, you can do local, which is just invoke it as a Python function, or you can also invoke it via an API, so you can pretend like it's a web service. We'll get into this later, but for now, let's just click on this one, run local, and we'll go ahead and say, so in this case, it's probably, I need to disable the security feature of my browser. So I'm going to click up here and say, take that off. I'm also going to take off all my things that get rid of ads. So now that that's all disabled, I can, let me just go back to where I started. So I'm going to go here, right click on it, say run local. Okay. And this is what's fun about it, is it's very similar to the Cloud9 interface. And remember, this function here, which we can look at, it doesn't do much. It just takes an event, we pass it in there, and then it processes it. So I can go in here and just say, hello there, or I am from Cloud9. And then I can just run it. And what will happen is that it will invoke this just like it would have invoked it remotely, but it's not calling Lambda. It's not using resources in Lambda. It's not doing anything in AWS. It's only running it locally. But look, it says all the stuff that's happening. Hello there. It shows you all the print messages. And so I can all kind of build out a more complex, Lambda workflow by testing things out here. So that's one big takeaway, is the import stuff. But what we'll do now that we know that we can debug stuff by importing things is let's make our own from scratch with Cloud9. So what I'll do is I'm going to again click on this section over here, and there's a plus button. I'm going to say create a new Lambda function, and from here I'll say hello March 14 change, and I'll say next. And then for runtimes, one thing that's a little bit irritating is that they only have a Python 3.6, which really is not that big of a deal. There's not that big of a difference between Python 3.6 and Python 3.8. I'll go ahead and click empty Python. And now this is one part to be aware of, is if you were going to build an API, then you probably would want to pick API Gateway, because it'll set all that up for you. In this case, we're just going to build a normal Lambda function that we can invoke via Python. I'm going to say next. This is also the part to be aware of, right? Remember, if you want to test out something like Amazon SQS or SNS or something like that, you would need to choose that administrative role. For now, I'm not doing anything like that, so I'm going to say next, and then I'm going to go ahead and say finish. So this will create a scaffolding over here that'll allow us to now start developing a Lambda function right inside of this Cloud9 environment. So look, it just kind of creates an empty Lambda function here that does almost nothing. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to my Lambda code base here, and I'm going to find a slightly more complex example. Let's go here. Lambda. And I'm going to find this example source. And I believe that the one I want to look at is this one. I have like a kind of a change example here. Let's go to, let's grab this change or greedy. That's the one I want to look for. Should be in here. Where is this? There we go. This is the one I want to grab. So I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to go back to Cloud9, and I'm just going to paste this in here. So let's just look at a couple things here. So I have the JSON module, I have a decimal module, and look, this all looks the same. So what I do is I print the event that comes in here, and I can load in the body of the event. And all this code does is it's like this would be like something someone would ask you on a programming challenge, is that I take the amount that's passed in and I turn it into a float value. And then I have these 4 different kinds of coins: a penny, a nickel, a dime, and a quarter. And what I do is I basically just give you the correct change. That's all this thing does. And then I return back the correct change via this result object like this. So that's all this thing does, is you put in an amount and it converts it to a float and gives you the correct amount of pennies, quarters, dimes. So how do I debug this? Again, I can just go down here and I can right click on it, and I can say run, and I can say run local. And then I just need to match what this is expecting, which this event is going to be amount. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put in amount like this, and we'll say how about $1.34. There we go. That looks good. I'll run this and let's see if it figures out the correct amount of change. And there we go. Look, amount 134. Look, it returned back 5 quarters, 1 nickel, and 4 pennies. So I already have something that's pretty useful. Maybe I'm building a vending machine API or something. All right, so that's pretty useful, right? We can build things, but let's make it even more useful, which is if I just right click on this, I can say deploy, and it'll put it right into AWS for me. So I'm going to go back to AWS now, and I'm going to go to functions, and look, here it is. There's the thing I just created. I can click on it, and I can scroll down here, and this should populate in a second with our code. There we go. So look, it puts our code in there for us. So now I can also use this thing to test it out. And now I can run it inside of AWS. So if I go here, I can say configure test event again, and I will say change, and then we'll just do the same thing. We'll just say amounts, and then, I don't know, we'll say $14.54. I'm going to create this, and now I just make sure that's selected, click test, and look, 58 quarters, 4 pennies. Pretty simple to be able to kind of go back and forth. And now let me show you the other thing we can do, which is if I go back, now let's test out the test remote. So if I swap this out, look, I can say lambda remote. And what it will do is it'll actually invoke this lambda inside of AWS, so it'll show up in the log messages and do all the things it would normally do in production. So to make sure it's different, I'm going to change this to $11.34, or let's do it something totally different. Let's say $200 and maybe like 99 cents. And let's go ahead and run this. Look, it was successful. 803 quarters, 2 dimes, 4 pennies. But now I also can go back to this environment here, and I can actually look at the log files, and this should show up in CloudWatch log files now because I invoked it remote. Here we go. There we go. There's our log message, right? So that's really the end-to-end power of how to use Cloud9. Is that you also can pull things in, you can create things, and then you can push it back and then get the whole feedback loop. So I think that's a good spot to start.